Chapter 3 talks about the theories of early childhood, and theories are the foundation of how we view children's development and what we do about it. So theories are rather important, but not as much fun as learning some of the ages and stages and doing the actual observations of children. But they help us when we come to do that. And you'll come across theories again in your early childhood studies. We do them in the intro class, ECE 101, and in various other classes like the family ecology. It will lean on a particular kind of theory, an emphasis on one of the theories. So this chapter gives a pretty thorough but somewhat quick study of the theories. You could have a whole class, for example, on just Piaget's theory of cognitive learning. So it's quick in that it combines them all and gives you a foundation. The behaviorism theory is one that's been around for a long time. You might have heard of it when you studied about Pavlov and the dogs. Psychologists often refer to behaviorism as a foundation in their learning. In the Pavlov and the dogs, they did a study where they rang a bell and then they fed the dog, and then they rang a bell and then they fed the dog, and they did that repeatedly until it got to where when they rang the bell, the dog anticipated being fed and would begin to salivate. And they then formed a theory that said that, gosh, we can control people's behavior by what we do in the environment. And many people then applied that to children, and they did things like give them stickers or gave them rewards, put enough marbles in a jar for the class, and the class gets to have a class party, things like that. The problem, and then the flip side of it, I should have said, is also that you can punish behaviors you don't want. So the way that came out with children was having timeout chairs, punishments like physical punishments, maybe parents using spanking, children being banished, like go to their bedroom, or in a classroom situation, maybe being shunned, a dunce chair put in the corner, things like that, where the response in the environment to children is so negative that it tries to make them not want to do the behavior again. The problem, a lot of problems with behaviorism, but one of the big problems is that children in a classroom situation are not controlled like animals in a lab. And it's not one lab tech with one child or one dog like in the lab. It's a whole group of children with one adult. And a teacher cannot be as consistent, even a parent can't be as consistent as a controlled environment with a dog in a lab. So what happens is children who should get rewarded often don't, because they're already doing the right thing. So one child gets rewarded for coming to circle time because they have trouble doing that, and 10 other children don't get rewarded because they come all the time. That's a simple example. In a larger classroom setting, giving the rewards can cause children to not like other children because they're getting rewards, or sometimes in classrooms the teacher will say, oh, Johnny misbehaved, so I'm going to take 3 marbles out, or everybody has to put their head down and miss recess, things like that. And so the whole class bears a punishment for one child's behavior. And what that does is makes a learning environment where people don't trust each other, where they don't like each other, where they might tease or taunt each other, or at the very least shy away from people who get into trouble. And that's not the kind of learning environment that promotes the pies of development. We want to promote a caring learning environment. There are a lot of problems with the behaviorists. Those are just a few of them. It's really much better to lean on other theories in child development, and as you read about them, I'd like you to question, which theories do you think influenced the people around you as you were growing up? Your parents, your teachers, maybe the parents of your friends. And which theories do you think most influence the way you work with children now? So try to make the study of the theories very personal and applicable to your life. There's a good summary of the theories in the first table in this chapter. It'll give you the key people and some of the key premises, as well as a brief summary of each of the theories. It's quite helpful. Theories are always changing in child development. They're evolving. One of the theories that has evolved since I was teaching is Howard Gardner and the theory of multiple intelligence. And your book doesn't cover that in this theories chapter. If you want to know more about that, you can go to chapter 15, and he talks about it back there under intellectual development with school-age children. So it is covered. That one has evolved in probably the last 20 years. When I first came into teaching, everybody was doing things with behaviorism. We were taught to use timeout chairs. We were taught to get children to change their behavior with stickers and timeout chairs and such. Now we know that's not a very good theory, and shortly after that, Piaget's theories evolved and became known in America, and people began to rely more on stages of cognition and how can you go about promoting that. And it's really been in probably the last 15 to 20 years that the Vygotsky theory, although it was developed back in the 30s in Poland, it didn't become known here until much later. And so using that theory has been one that people have turned to as they've moved away from behaviorism. Vygotsky and Piaget are quite similar in that their approaches to children rely on many of the same tenets. Vygotsky takes it from a little different perspective, but there's some similarities there. Most people don't adopt a single theory. Most people say, well, I really like this part, and so I'm going to go with the zone of proximal development, for example, with the Vygotsky theory, but I really believe in the maturationist approach, or I use this other theory as my foundation. So you may find that there are particular parts, tenets, that you like out of different theories, and that's fine. You can rely on several different theorists as you go about your work with young children. In fact, I would encourage you to figure out what you like or don't like. One of the other new theories is about information processing. And really this has come about in the technological age more since we've had computers. And people are beginning to say, well, maybe our brains function a little bit like computers, and how we gather information, store information, and how does that influence learning and teaching for young children. You may find that some people are still using a lot of behaviorism. You'll find programs like assertive discipline in the public schools particularly, or you'll find when parents hit roadblocks with perhaps helping children to learn to use a potty, that they will resort to behaviorism style things like a sticker chart or something like that. Most of the time those things are very short, not very helpful in the long term for children's development. It's sort of a quick fix. A child might do something initially for stickers, but they outgrow that very quickly. The last theory, or one of the last theories covered in this chapter, is the Bronfenbrenner Ecological Theory, and you'll come across that also in our family course, ECE 242, which we actually call Family Ecology, and it's based on that theory. But I like to think of that theory like a stone thrown into a pond, and where the stone goes in, you see the largest, deepest puddle, the response to the stone. You see a round ring, and from that then you see the rings spread out and out and out. And I think where the stone goes in is like the child. That's the things that are very most important to them: their bodies, their dogs, their family, the most immediate people. in their world. And then as you go out with those outer rings, you find the neighborhoods, the extended family, if they're in child care, preschool programs, those have influence. And they extend out as influences on the child, like we were talking in the last chapter about trends. Some of those trends become the larger societal view that impacts the child, but the child isn't even aware that some of those trends exist. So funding for government programs, it impacts the child if they have enough food or subsistence issues or housing issues, maybe immunization issues. Those things affect the child, but the child isn't aware of the larger systems. So there's a lot of different kinds of theories, and they each focus on maybe a little different view or a different slant. You should try and develop your own theory and also know about how these theories affect the interactions between adults and children. One of the reasons you need to know that is because if you go to work in a program where they have a strong behaviorist perspective and you've decided that you really like the ecological theory or the cognitive learning theory or the social learning theory, you're going to have a difference when it comes to how to care for children, how to explain things to parents. If you have somebody that says, well, you should give him a sticker chart at home and tell him to go to his bedroom when he does such and such, and you think that those things are damaging to children, you want to make sure that you have the same philosophical foundation for where you work. And the same is true if you have your own program and parents are coming into it. You want to make sure that they understand what your philosophy is and that they have a compatible philosophy. Because if you have a parent who says, well, we just beat his butt when he says dirty words, that's not going to hold up because you aren't going to support the idea of physically spanking children, I hope. So theories become important in how we act with children, and you want your theory to be compatible. I hope you enjoy the chapter on theories. It ends the first section of our book, and then we'll go on into more of the aspects of individual children and less of this more global view. So on to chapter 4.